Welcome to R&R Livin' Life. For this, our second instalment of our Cape York trip. In this episode, we leave Ingham just after 7 and head for Cairns along the Bruce Highway, a distance of around 230 kilometres. Our first stop for the morning was at Hinchinbrook Lookout. There had been low clouds and light rain as we crossed the Herbert River, so wasn't sure what the view would be like from the lookout. Rick and I were glad we stopped, as the view was stunning, even with the cloud cover. Located between Ingham and Cardwell, the Hinchinbrook Lookout provides uninterrupted views of Hinchinbrook Channel and Hinchinbrook Island. Not far from the car park was an interpretive shelter with information panels. We took the short walk, 120 metres along a track up to Panju Lookout, giving us a unique opportunity to see across the Hinchinbrook Channel to the rugged Hinchinbrook Island, part of the wet tropics and the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage areas. I was especially impressed by the rivers meandering through the rainforest down to the ocean. What a scenic way to start our second day of this trip. Then it was back in the boat and on to Cardwell, a coastal town in the rural locality of the Cassowary Coast region, settled in 1864, the first European settlement north of Bowen at that time. The town hugs the coastline, with Greenwood Hill immediately to the west of the town, rising to 64 metres above sea level, and to the east the Coral Sea. With the rugged beauty of the Cardwell Range as a backdrop, the craggy topography has such biodiversity that it has been protected by the introduction of forestry reserves and national parks. The coastal escarpment is covered in rainforests which transition to the west to eucalypt woodland and tropical savanna, while the town overlooks idyllic tropical islands. We took a stroll down to the beach where we could see the end of Hinchinbrook Channel and Rockingham Bay, which are both part of the Coral Sea. From Cardwell we passed through the little settlement of Kennedy, with the eastern part of the locality and the farmland mostly at sea level, but rises to 710 metres in the foothills of the nearby Mount Carrucan. The remaining land is used for a mixture of agricultural purposes, including growing crops, particularly sugarcane, and grazing cattle on native vegetation. We crossed the Tully River at Uramo, with headwaters in part of the Great Dividing Range that plunges down the Cardwell Range through densely forested gorges. The river has a history of flooding, whereby during significant floods the floodplains of the Tully and Murray rivers merge and can cut the Bruce Highway. I was fascinated by the banana plantations, creating strips of colour across the landscape, with their large, lush green leaves, surprisingly creating a different green across the landscape to the rainforest green. Although bananas have been grown in Australia since the 1830s, they were not commercially produced until the 1880s, when crops from Queensland were transported south. Chinese played a dominant role in both the growing and importation of bananas across Australia until the 1930s, and continue to be active in the area today. The banana is believed to be indigenous to the Malay Peninsula, Indonesia, the Philippines and New Guinea, but has been widely known beyond these areas for thousands of years. The success of the plantations in North Queensland led to the establishment of trade with the southern colonies, while today more than 90% of Australia's crop comes from far north Queensland. We crossed the Johnson River, comprising the North Johnson River and the South Johnson River, with the river system headwaters rising on the Atherton Tablelands of the North Tropical Coast, and flows through steep narrow gorges to their junction on the coastal plain at Innisfail. Together, the combined rivers flow over 200 kilometres from source to mouth. Crocodiles swim and live in all areas of the Johnson River, so no swimming is advisable. I was fascinated to see a cane train crossing the road, this one empty. Cane trains are a vital part of the sugar industry, transporting sugar cane from fields to mills in the region. A dense network of 2-foot gauge railways and small diesel locomotives connects the plantations to local mills, hauling the harvested cane efficiently across fields, rivers and roads. After watching the cane train cross the road, we made our way along the Palmerston Highway to Mumu Rainforest Skywalk. What an experience this turned out to be! As we left the boat, a few march flies decided they would indulge in biting us. Thinking they would leave us alone as we made our way to the ticket office, only to be assaulted by swarms of them. While I was busy swatting them off Rick, he hastily paid for our tickets of entry. Thankfully, once we had entered the rainforest and were away from the kiosk, they left us alone. Walking through the Wurrungun National Park was an incredible experience. First up was a nice wide path that led us through the rainforest, where signs of the cyclone earlier in the year could be seen. There is more than 1,100 metres of forest walking tracks, connected by elevated walkways, with rest shelters full of information about the history and heritage of Mumu Rainforest. Rick and I made our way to the 350-metre elevated skywalk, rising from ground level to 15 metres above the ground, as it meanders its way through one of the largest remaining continuous stands of complex vine forest on basalt soils in the wet tropics, before we came to the 40-metre long cantilever, with the last 10 metres, 20 metres above the canopy. All along the track were audio information stops about the plants that littered the forest. From there we continued on the elevated walkway to the tower, 37 metres above ground, with an observation tower at the top. It was too good an opportunity to miss, so I even made the climb up the tower, stopping at the first level to muster my courage before continuing on to the top of the tower. What an amazing view, with spectacular, tantalising views over the North Johnson River gorge and sweeping views over the pristine rainforest-clad mountainous landscape. It was an exhilarating experience being high in the rainforest canopy, but what a stunning rainforest landscape, with the massive bulk of Mount Bartlefreda and its surrounding ridges visible from such a great vantage point on the western side of the range. We followed the lower grade alternate option on our return to the ticket office, making a hasty retreat to the boat. It was well worth the stop, even being attacked by march flies, though we certainly could have done without them. The stark contrast between the country we had travelled from South Johnston to this amazing experience was something. From rolling hills of various types of farming to the lush rainforest experience, so much green. From the Skyway we continued along Palmerston Highway to the little community of Millamilla on the southern end of the Atherton Tableland, nestled amongst emerald hills surrounded by lush dairy pastures and majestic rainforests. From here we made a roundabout circuit as we wanted to visit the highest road in Queensland. So, not far out of Millamilla, we turned onto the East Evelyn Road that took us to join the Kennedy Highway near Evelyn, on through Jensenville, and then turned onto the Harry Rankin Memorial Drive, where we could tick off visiting the highest road in Queensland. It was then back to the Kennedy Highway, through Mount Hypermee to the truck stop near Atherton on the Millamilla-Atherton Road, and back to Malanda. By now I was well and truly lost, but was enjoying the scenery. We stopped in Millamilla, wanting to get some lunch, but the line waiting to be served was too much for us, so raided our snacks instead. Millamilla was established in 1908 and has a rich history tied to the dairy industry, which plays a central role in the town's identity today. Being at an elevation of 732 metres above sea level, the area provides a cooler climate, making it an ideal location for agriculture. We stopped at the town's centrepiece, the Malanda Falls, a tranquil waterfall in lush rainforest, and strolled down to the calm waters below the waterfall. Surrounded by fertile lands of rolling green pastures, it was a far cry from the dry outback of Western Queensland. After a short break, it was on to the Malander Lake Barine Road, past Rankin Mill and Topaz Sustainable Timbers, to the Gillies Highway near the Gillies Cafe and Bar. On the way, we passed Lake Barine, Robinson's Lookout, and Little Mulgrave National Park. It really is an interesting drive with winding sections and steep descents down the Gillies. The Gillies Range is a chain of summits that separate the coastal plains of far north Queensland from the Atherton Tableland interior. The road descends 800 metres over 19 kilometres with 263 corners, featuring lush rainforest and volcanic landscape. Originally constructed between 1925 and 26, the road was initially one way with a timetable system for traffic flow, later widened and modernised for two-way traffic. Even though it is two-way traffic, we still needed to watch out for vehicles coming up the range taking corners too fast. We joined the Bruce Highway at Gordonvale and made our way to Cairns, arriving mid-afternoon. After settling in at the motel, we checked out how to get to the airport, as that was where we were leaving the boat once we had collected the four-wheel drive troopy. The following morning we left the motel around 7:15 and made our way into Cairns, ready to collect the vehicle at 9 o'clock. What a morning! I know I was a little excited for the trip ahead. The only drawback was that the morning was very overcast and humid, making me rethink what was ahead. Once we had collected the troopy and had an induction on the ins and outs of it, we made our way back to the rooftop car park outside Woolworths, where we unloaded the boat and packed the troopy. We then made our way out to the airport, where we parked the boat under cover before heading north, crossing the Barron River. We were on our way. Just north of Palm Cove, we stopped for coffee at Buchanan Point, with views towards Double Isle, and a few hundred metres southeast, Scout Hat Island, officially Haycock Island, a small uninhabited island located just offshore from Palm Cove. Rick and I walked out onto the beach to dip our toes into the ocean, admiring the ocean views. The islands were formed by a huge earthquake that caused a massive upheaval of the Earth's tectonic plates. This can be observed by the steep angles of the rocks protruding upwards from the ocean. After our break at Buchanan Point, we continued up the Captain Cook Highway. We passed Ewell Point, a scenic coastal cape featuring a rocky promontory, fringing reef, sandy beach ridges, and mangrove swamps. With the tide out, we could see a mixture of gravel, silty clay, mud and sand along the highway. Sharks and rays use the shallow reef flats and intertidal zones for feeding, resting and reproduction. Its shallow topography and isolated coral structures provide consistent low-tide refuge, making it ecologically unique compared to the outer reefs of the Great Barrier Reef. We followed the Captain Cook Highway, also known as the Great Barrier Reef Drive, as it winds its way along the coastline. Around 70 kilometres of stunning coastal views of the Coral Sea to the east and the wet tropical rainforest to the west. The road often hugs the coastline in places. The diverse scenery from thick forest to clear, absolutely picturesque white sandy beaches was incredible. A coastal highway connecting Cairns to Port Douglas was first proposed in 1918. Construction of the original route began in 1931, with it officially opened in 1933 as a toll road. The highway was originally unsealed, with sealing works taking place between 1938 and 1940, with the last section sealed in 1945. The highway toll was abolished in 1946. We passed sections of the highway that had been damaged by Cyclone Jasper in December 2023, causing landslips, debris and significant damage. It was amazing seeing how main roads were shoring up the highway in places with slope stabilisation and rock protection. I read somewhere that there were over 20 sites being worked on simultaneously to complete the work, minimising delays where possible. Such a huge job! We arrived in Port Douglas just after midday. the only place in the world where two World Heritage Sites meet. The Great Barrier Reef, containing the world's largest collection of coral reefs with 400 types of coral, 1,500 species of fish, and 4,000 types of mollusks, and the Daintree rainforest, part of the wet tropics of Queensland, a 180 million year old rainforest said to be the world's oldest, featuring high biodiversity and scenic landscapes, including the nearby Mossman Gorge. We followed Wharf Street around past the Yacht Club and Marina, looking for a water point to fill up our water tank, but had no luck finding it, so continued on Island Point Road to Trinity Bay Lookout, with stunning views of the famous 4 Mile Beach, with its stunning stretch of golden sand. On our way back through Port Douglas, we stopped at Anzac Park, positioned perfectly on the edge of the Coral Sea and the surrounding tropical landscapes, and stunning views of Dixon Inlet. On leaving Port Douglas, we continued on the Captain Cook Highway, a very scenic route through lush tropical scenery as it winds its way between mountains and the coast to Mossman. Mossman lies inland from Port Douglas on the floodplain of the Mossman River. The headwaters of the river rises under Devil's Thumb on the Mount Carbine tableland in the Great Dividing Range. The river crosses the Captain Cook Highway near Mossman before eventually discharging into Trinity Bay in the Coral Sea, descending 1,050 metres over a 24-kilometre course. Our aim for stopping in Mossman was to fill our water tank, and that also proved to be a little difficult, as we could not find it to start with, and it wasn't until we turned around that we could see the tap beside a huge rain tree near St David's Anglican Church. After filling our tank with water, it was on to Daintree village. Our day had been a mixture of light showers, overcast conditions, and bursts of sun. Overall, it had been an interesting day's drive. We pulled up for the day at an RV camp overlooking the floodplains of the Daintree River, about 50 kilometres north of Port Douglas. It was certainly a top spot to unwind after the day's travel. Rick and I were in our element as we watched a herd of Brahman cows and calves graze on the river flats. After we had set up, we went for a stroll up into Daintree village, perched high on the southern bank of the Daintree River. The original settlement was created in the 1870s by timber cutters who came to log the red cedar, which once flourished in the area. However, that industry is long gone. Day 1 of our rooftop tent adventure. Rick and I will leave you here as the sun sets over the Daintree River flats as we sit and watch cattle grazing. What a way to end an amazing day. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Join us next time as we continue our Cape York adventure. Thank you for watching. Take care. Enjoy your journey. Rick and Rosemary. R&R Live and Life.